Baba knows the way. For Joseph Baba Ifa, Baba knows the way. We follow the signs. He walks with the Orisha through sacred lines. He speaks with the ancients. He honors the drum. He carries the wisdom where we all come from.
Hey family, thank you for tuning in to Our Roots podcast with Joseph Baba Ifa. We're only the strongest roots, see the light, brought to you by Botanica Candles and more. And if you haven't had the opportunity, hit that subscribe button. Phil, what's going on, brother?
Hey, I'm good, man. How are you? Happy Sunday, everybody.
Happy Sunday, man. Another week in the books, man. What a week.
I know. It seems like, for some reason, even though we record these shows every week, it seems like it feels like there's so much time has passed.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I was just talking about that with some of the people at the store. Like, the first half of the year is gone.
That's insane.
You know, just like that, we're in June, and you kind of look back, you're like, where did it go?
I feel like we were just doing the Letra de Años.
Yeah, and, actually, it's funny you mentioned that because the African New Year actually just passed, the Yoruba New Year, and the Odu was Baba Osameji.
Okay.
So we've actually made a video about that already, guys. So if you guys, are interested in our thoughts, opinions, and interpretations of the Odu Abaye that came out of Oke-Itache, it was Baba Osameji. I think the one in Oke-Ekiti or Igeti was Iroso-Obe or Iroso-Umbo. So it's ironic because that's actually one of the patakís we're going to be going over today in this episode called Eshu the Trickster God.
Okay. So this one should be a fun one because, from my general knowledge, Eshu is like Loki.
He is. He's Loki's big homie.
Yeah.
Yeah, he taught Loki everything. I would go as far to say Eshu is a mixture of like Loki and Pennywise the Clown.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, he's like there. Maybe a little bit of Forrest Gump in there as well. He was kind of there for everything that's ever happened.
That's exactly what I was going to say about Forrest Gump. Like, he's literally everywhere where everything is happening.
Eshu is the TK Kirkland of the Yoruba pantheon.
That's funny.
How are you feeling, sir? How's your process going with your search? I want to make sure we highlight that as well.
Okay, yeah, man. I still do need a kidney.
Yeah.
So if you guys are interested in finding out some more information, you guys can just go to kidneyforphil.com and learn about everything about kidney donation and how it impacts my life and what you guys can do for me. I am having a benefit coming in July 11th. That is on my birthday. Hopefully you can make it, Joseph.
Yeah. Planning on it.
And yeah, so I do have an update though.
Okay.
So I haven't told anybody this actually. So you guys are going to be the first to know. But I have two possible donors that
Thank heavens.
That have passed a lot of the screenings already. So
lovely.
So that they could be one of them is a woman from Michigan that doesn't know me.
Yep.
And one of them is someone here. So
wow.
Yeah.
Well, wishing you the best on that. Definitely important to stay updated. And guys, if interested, even if it's just learning about the topic or understanding what goes into the process, be sure to check out. It's kidneyforphil.com, right?
Yeah, kidneyforphil.com. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. Well, you're always in our best wishes and prayers, and we appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
And Eshu the Trickster, right? So you notice that, when we talk about Jungian archetypes, which were derived from the work of Carl Jung, there's always a trickster. There's always a deity or an entity that kind of holds the universe in balance. And what holds the universe in balance is ultimately our decisions and free will. It's this one caveat that humanity has that really keeps everybody from God Almighty to the opposite on their toes. And when it comes to Yoruba theology, it's Eshu, right? And, the famous slogan, Eshu is not Satan, Eshu is not the devil. He's really just the keeper of the balance. When we look at various Odus like Oyeku Meji, where he represents the darkness that actually predated the light, or even other Odus where he's simply the keeper of the balance, such as in the Odu Ochetura, where he's actually the dispensary of Ache. He's the one who actually gives it out and provides it based on him testing people's character to see that they're deserving of Olodumari's grace, which is basically what Ache is. So with this episode, we really just wanted to focus on this quality because it's probably the most popular and recognized of his attributes and probably the most entertaining. Eshu has to be the most comical of the Orishas. And when I mean comical, I mean it in the most classical theatrical sense. It's actually, pretty dark. He has some dark humor. So the first one I have to think of is in the Odu of Iroso Obe or Iroso Umbo. Very popular sign, and this story is pretty popular, but I think it's really Eshu at his finest when it comes to his trickery. And in this Odu, Eshu had Orisha crowned. He was initiated in Idosu, or the mysteries of Orisha, right? He was a king, and he had this habit of going next to the ocean. He'd go for that stroll on the shore, and he would run into a gentleman named Omokun. Now, Omokun was an interesting character because he was the prince of the ocean. Omokun literally means son of the ocean. And his father was Olokun, the king of the ocean, or owner of the ocean. So there were a lot of, privileges that came with that. And one of them was wealth, and, when Eshu would walk by, Omokun would always taunt him, saying, "Oh, you're just an Orisha priest. You guys don't even have that much money." You would bully him. And Eshu was getting really tired of it, but he knew he couldn't slap Omokun because, that kind of went against the law. And he knew who his father was. He was intense. So Eshu decided to go and visit Oromela. Now, when he went to visit Ifa, he went to Orula and said, "Hey, I want you to make me a bawalao. I need you to make me a bawalao." And Eshu and Oromela said, "Well, that's fine. I mean, you have the qualities and conditions. I gave you hand of Ifa." He was Iroso Umbo in his hand of Ifa as well. And he said, whenever you want, just bring the money. And, Orula gave him a significant number because Ifa initiation is very costly. And Eshu looked at Orula and said, "You're going to do Ifa to me for free, and it's going to be the best decision you ever made." And at that moment, Oromela, who's married to Oshun, who was a Zapete Biayafa, hopped up and said, "I'm really tired of you guys trying to come around and muscle my husband into doing Itelodu to you guys. You need the money. We need the money. We don't live off of promises and dreams." So Eshu said, "Miss, you're going to thank me." And Eshu climbed to the top of their roof and jumped off, free falling down to the ground right on his head. Needless to say, big concussions, convulsions, lesions, all these different things. And, Oshun started screaming at Orula to save him. And Orula said, "The only way I can save him is by doing Ifa to him right now." And Oshun said, "Well, do it." And he was like, "Man, isn't this ironic?" So when he did Ifa to Eshu, the Odu Iroso Obe or Iroso Umbo was revealed again. And Oromela pretty much shunned him out of his house. He wasn't really pleased with his new godson, especially the way, he had, maneuvered his initiation. And Eshu looked at him and he said, "Godfather, Padrino, I promise you this is going to be the best decision you ever made." And he went running to the beach, and Omokun was there. And Omokun was like, "Oh, where have you been the past week? I guess you couldn't handle all of my taunting." And Eshu looked at him and said, "You can't talk to me like that no more. I'm a made man. I'm a bawalao." And when Omokun saw the ide, or the bracelet, Omokun was like, "Orula, did he Ifa to you?" And he's like, "Yeah, he did Ifa to me." He's like, "Where'd you get the money?" He's like, "None of your business," but he did it. And when Omokun confirmed everything and whatnot, he told Eshu, "Please, try to convince your godfather to do Ifa to me." And Eshu said, "I don't think he's doing any more Ifas after me," because he knew the conditions upon which he had done Ifa. But he said, "If you're careful, maybe I'll do Ifa to you." And Omokun said, "I'll pay you whatever you want." So Eshu charged whatever he wanted. And when he brought Omokun to do Ifa with him, and he put Oromela as the Yubona, he paid Orula, apart from, what he owed him for his Ifa, what he was going to pay him handsomely to be the Yubona as well. And Oromela rejoiced, and he thanked his godson, and Eshu thanked him. And, from that day forward, they were inseparable, right? It really is, and apart from that, Eshu charged what he charged. So everybody won except Omokun. But Omokun wasn't a very humble guy, but he learned it with time. But if you look at a story like this, it's Eshu in his finest form. I mean, you know, it was one of the most ingenious ways to get everything he wanted. He wanted to son Omohun. He did that. He wanted to be a Bawalao and learn from Orula. He did that. And he kind of, you know, pulled out a loan, you know, kind of pro bono, to be able to make it all happen. So I think the wildest part or visual for me, and this is where, you know, animation, Eshu is kind of like the Deadpool of Ifa as well.
Okay.
You know, because when you look at Deadpool, Deadpool can't die. He loses an arm. They hit him over the head. One of my favorite characters, if not the most favorite. He's a wild guy. But that's pretty much Eshu, you know? And you see the visual, or you think of the visual of him jumping off of Orula's hut and hitting his head on the ground, and Orula using Ifa medicine to cure him, which is another really interesting point as well, because, you know, with that kind of trauma, you begin to wonder, you know, what tools did they have in the ancient world to be able to heal something like that? But I guess they were able to. So it makes us wonder, you know, are we actually primitive and were they advanced? But neither here nor there. That's quite a story to show his trickster form. So that's in the Odu of Iroso Umbo. Now, Eshu really loved Orula. You know, he really appreciated him apart from the whole Ifa thing. You know, he recognized qualities in Orula as being one of the greatest examples of Iwa. Eshu was a big fan of Iwa, which is good character or conduct, and Orumila was a great example of it. So he was always finding ways to help Orula because he knew Orula was a good guy and that he deserved everything Olodumare had to offer. So in the Odu of Obewenye, or Obeiwori, was where Death really had an obsession with Orula. He really hated Orula because Orumila knew how to work the gray area of life or the universe, where if somebody's life was hanging in the balance, if it was destined to where they could actually survive, Orula ensured it. So this really frustrated Death because Death had an addiction when it came to humans as far as consuming them. So every time Orumila took a meal away, Death took it personally. So in the Odu of Obewori, or Obewenye, was where Death brought forth false claims about Ifa and said that Orumila was doing this, was doing that, etc. And, you know, none of it was true, but Olodumare had no time to check it out either. So he told Death if this was the case, that he could do, or she could do, depending on its gender at that time, because it changes from pataki to pataki, that they could have their way with Orumila. So Orula had a really good habit of maintenance, and his maintenance was asking Ifa every morning what needed to be done. And that day, Orumila revealed the Odu Obeiwori, which was his own, where Ifa told him to provide sacrifice to Eshu and to collaborate with Eshu. And Eshu told him, hey, Death is coming for you. You know, I didn't want to say anything in heaven because then they'd know the plan to defend you, but I knew that you were prudent and you would read yourself today anyway, so let's get to work. And what they did is they confectioned a fake head that looked just like Orula's with his face and everything. And from the same rooster that Eshu was going to consume, that head was fed as well. It was really, you know, covered in feathers. It was a real ugly scene. And they left it at the foot of a tree in the cemetery. When the Ebo was placed, Death came looking for Orumila and saw him in the Ebo and said, oh, thank heavens, he killed himself. You know, one less thing I have to do. Now I can eat him in peace and I'll go show Olodumare so I can have what I want. But when they took the Ebo to heaven and they opened it and they revised it, they realized it wasn't Orumila at all. And when Death was enraged and ready to go back down and hunt Orula again, Olodumare looked and said, you know, you can't kill somebody twice. Orula has just become immortal, right? And it was all thanks to Eshu. So, you know, when we think about trickery, sometimes we think that it only behooves or benefits the person doing the tricking. In reality, Eshu was always trying to help Orumila because he knew that Death wasn't ethical, that she was willing to do whatever it took to eliminate her enemy. You know, when Orumila was simply trying to act out Olodumare's plan. So it's a positive aspect and how it saved lives at that point. And when we talk about his trickery saving lives, another Odu we have to look at is the Odu Baba Ifa. And Atemeji was where Orumila had a daughter named Poroye, which was a famous story from Iratemei, right? And when Odudua was actually going to sacrifice him, it's a much longer story, but that's in the Odu Baba Ifa. If you guys ever want to watch that video, it's there in the Mei series. Odua was going to consume or eat Orumila's daughter, Poroye. So Orumila wasn't a fan of this, and he was trying to find a way to save his child. And when he consulted Ifa, Iretemeji was revealed, where Ifa told him to perform sacrifice to Eshu once again. And when he did this, Eshu came up with the genius idea to switch out Poroye with a she-goat. And at the last moment, when the sacrifice was about to occur, under the cover, Eshu grabbed the girl and switched her out with the goat, and they sacrificed the goat instead. And when Odudua consumed the goat, he was like, man, this is the best tasting human I've ever had. But when they looked, it was a she-goat. And Odua, didn't understand what was occurring. Orumila confessed what had occurred. And Odua wanted to punish him, but he said, I like the taste of the goat so much better. And from that day forward, all of the Orishas started consuming animals instead of humans. Iretemeji, along with my own Odu of Irete Sukaz, where human sacrifice became taboo, amongst others. It's also in the Odu Otura Dakoi, etc. But once again, Eshu's trickery saving lives. He empathized with Orula, he performed sacrifice, and he empathized with Orumila's daughter as well. And he said, there's no reason for another innocent life to be taken. When we talk about Eshu, Eshu is one of the Orishas who defends children. There's actually a path of Eshu in the Odu of Ofundi, known as Eshu Alawata. And it's known as the defender of children. So it's an interesting thing as well, where he would utilize his powers to be able to, save kids and save people in general. But, sometimes he would do it to punish. Like when you look at the Odu of Owani Chobe, it says that Eshu doesn't appreciate when people don't perform their ebos or their recommendations and sacrifices. He takes it as a personal offense, not only because of the disrespect to Orumila and the proclamation of Ifa's oracle, but because it means he eats less. Like in the Odu of Owani Chobe, he was promised a rooster, and in the ebo, and the person didn't provide it or wasn't planning on providing it at all. Maybe they thought Orumila charged too much. Maybe they felt like they didn't have to give it, what have you. But Eshu took personal offense and started really disrupting the person's life. I mean, all of the symptoms you could think of: insomnia, torment, obstacles, lack of fulfillment, failure, to the point where the person came back. And Owani Chobe was revealed again. And Orumila recommended the same sacrifice. Hey, you owe a rooster. And the person was like, okay, I'll do it. But Orula said, well, it's not the same price as before. Now it's double. And the reason Orumila doubled the price was because Eshu was the one who told him, hey, if you want my support, now you have to double the number when people don't do the ebo the first time. So Eshu would coerce and maneuver things in a way where he always got his way. And that's just the blessing he has. When you look at Odus like Ochetura, Oyekumei, he basically does what he wants. And, for good reason. He maintains everything in the balance. Life is not possible without this Orisha, as far as Elegua Eshu goes. And there's other versions of this story as well. Like in the Odu of Odimei, it speaks of when the woman was told to perform ebo and did not. And she went to the marketplace. And when she did, rather than doing ebo, she took the money and spent it on 3 dolls. And she didn't realize that she had bought them from Eshu in disguise, who sold them to her because he was frustrated that she didn't perform the sacrifice like Orumila wanted or instructed. So when she went home, those dolls became possessed, kind of like an Annabelle situation, and started doing a bunch of randomness, and scaring her and freaking her out, to the point where she went back to the kiosk at the flea market and told him, hey, I want a refund. And the clerk was like, hey, no refunds, but if you want, I'll take the dolls back off your hands if they're interrupting you that much, which she did. And then she went running back to Orumila. Same Odu was revealed, same ebo, but once again, Eshu had told Orula, now you have to charge double. So the person ended up having to do the same ebo for twice as much unnecessarily. Eshu's trickery is aided by his shape-shifting ability. When you look at the Odu of Oyekun Bedura or Oyekun Ofun, it speaks of Eshu Larufa. And this is known as the Eshu that changes shape and form. That's why Eshu one day can appear as a man, then he could appear as a woman or a cat, or a dog, a rat, a boy, a girl. Like, he has no shape. He has no form. That's why Eshu La Rufa and the Odu of Oyekun Bedura always had to be covered in blood. So that concept is in that Odu. Why, when we clean Eshu, which technically Ifa says we should only do so once a year. I mean, he gets nasty. I mean, for high volume brothers, you know, your Eshu, there's times I haven't seen my Eshu's face in months. Like, I'll look at him, and, you know, remember the issue I brought in for How to Take Care of the Warriors, Phil?
Yeah. I remember it.
Imagine that face being so covered in red palm oil, salt, blood, honey, feathers, everything, that there's been times I haven't seen his face. You know, so when things kind of calm down at the end of the year around my Ifa festival, like, I'll literally have to take, like, a spackle or whatever it's called, like the thing that helps do reparations on walls and drywall and things like that. Yeah. And I'll have to use that to kind of shave the gook off.
Oh my gosh, wow.
And I'm talking about layers and layers and layers. So that's in the Odu of Oyekun Bedura, where Eshu, when blood wasn't touching him, he would start getting glitchy, and he would start, you know, changing and manifesting in different shapes, ways, and forms, and it caused a lot of havoc. Other aspects where you see this is like Odus like Osala Fobeyo and Obetumajo, where Eshu had two faces, right? And he would shift back and forth. So it's very important to, you know, maintain Eshu in a attended state, especially definitely him getting a rooster at least once a year, so that he can have that tranquility. But he's aided in all of these stories by his ability to be able to change shape. I mean, if you notice in one story, he was disguised as a clerk. In another one, he comes in the shape of an animal, etc. So, you know, that aids him quite a bit. One of the first examples we see of Eshu's trickery is in the Odu of Baba Ifa. And this possibly may be one of the stories that helps explain the formation of Odu and the constructs of the universe, right, as far as progressively. So it speaks of two friends in the Odu of Ifa that went for divination. And both of them were revealed the Odu of Ifa. And they were both told to perform sacrifice to not lose each other or to, you know, not be separated. They chose not to arrogantly because they said there's nothing in this world that could separate us. We're best friends. So Eshu heard this, and once again, he was very annoyed, and he said, now I'm going to have to prove to you why nothing lasts forever. So they were farmers, and on either side of the road, they had their farm, and they would talk all day about the farm. And one day, a guy walked down the path, right? And when he walked down the path, a conversation ensued afterwards. And one of the friends said, hey, did you see that guy? He was dressed in all red. And the other friend was like, no, he was dressed in all black. And from that, an argument ensued about what the gentleman was actually wearing, to the point where they argued so bad that they never spoke to each other again till the day they died. Imagine that, you know, you're spending decades just looking at another person on the other side of the road and you never say a word to them. So when they died and they went in front of God Almighty, they saw him, they saw Orula, and they saw the guy dressed in half red, half black. And that guy was Eshu. And Eshu expressed to them or confessed to them, I was the guy who caused you to separate. And I dressed like this knowing that you guys would argue over it and never speak again. And they said, well, why would you do this? He said, because you guys didn't perform at bowl. So, you know, being that I didn't get what I needed, you guys now have an unfulfilled life. You know, once again, that dark humor. So they decided to reincarnate, and they got it right the next time, where they were able to live as friends happily through a lifetime. And Eshu got his rooster, of course. But once again, Eshu at his finest, you know. Really ingenious things that now modernly we might look at and be like, yeah, okay, a guy dressed in half red, half black. But perception is what Eshu deals with. You know, when we talk about him occupying the subconscious mind, the prehistoric mind or part of the brain, the darkness, you know, he has a play on all of these things, our attitude, our interpretation of things, our perception, our emotions, all of these different things. So, you know, it really isn't that far-fetched for him to take something so simple and turn it into something catastrophic, you know? Kind of like the effect the mouse might have on the elephant, causing it to destroy the building, and all the other effects that subsequently come from that, you know? He is the random, you know, sway of a butterfly's wings that could cause a hurricane across the Atlantic. So he's the butterfly effect at best. So you have that. Other Odus. Eshu really was a genius. He was very ingenious in all of his plots and his plans and things like that. Eshu had an enemy in the Odu of Oyekumbara, and his enemy was the horse. And he really wanted to dominate the horse. He wanted to ride the horse. Even before he had all these desires, he was just really annoyed with the horse because the horse would bully him. You know, when you look at Eshu, there's a schism there. There's a dichotomy there because you have literally the owner of the expanse of the absence of light in the universe, right? The most gargantuan Orisha or energy. And then you have this archetype where he's constantly being bullied, or he's the smallest in some way, shape, or form. So it's definitely a duality. It's a contrast. But, you know, as an Orisha, Eshu was seen as being smaller. And there's other Odus that speak of this, like in Obeyono when he was the smallest and he out-wrestled everybody, or in the Odu of Irosodi where he stopped growing, all these different things. But in Oyekumbara, he really was tired of the horse bullying him. It was the Bronco, and the horse would bully him and annoy him and just taunt him and harass him. So he went to visit Orumila. And this is one of the Odus where even Eshu had to go for divination with Ifa. You have some people, or you hear, you know, Eshu was all-knowing. Even Eshu had problems that Ifa resolved. You know, this is in Oyekumbara, and there's another one in Oyekunsa. So Elegua went for divination. And Oyekumbara was revealed, or Oyekun Pabala, or Pabara. And it was identified that he needed to perform sacrifice with oats and corn. So he did the ebo, and I think rope was also a part of the ebo, and he went to deposit it in the wilderness, right, or in the plains. And when he did, the horse was there. Now the horse noticed that Eshu had something in his hand, and the horse looked and said, "What you got there?" He said, "Oh, I got some oats, some corn, you know, I'm probably going to eat it." And the horse was like, "Can you share?" He's like, "Why would I share with you? You know, you taunt me, you harass me. You do everything within your power to make my life miserable. You know, I'm not sharing anything with you." And the horse was like, hey, I'm sorry, but the reason I'm always angry is because I'm hungry. You know, this grass really isn't doing it for me. And he said, "All right, well, how about this? If you eat my food and I give it to you, then you have to let me ride you, right? And we'll always have that relationship." And the horse was like, "Man, as long as you feed me, I'll do whatever you want." So he held his hand out, and the horse started eating. And then Eshu hopped on his back and took the rope and yoked him up. And the horse said, "Oh, why are you doing this?" He said, "Just to make sure that you never, you know, go back on your promise." And till this day, we have the cowboy, right? So in the Odu of Oyekumbara, due to his ingenuity, he was able to manipulate the horse into being a beast of burden, ultimately. Because till this day, it's very hard to explain, for any other reason, why horses do what we want them to do. I remember I was at the farm recently, and there was, you know, I'm focusing on counting my animals and things like that. It was a big order. And I'm putting it in the trunk, and out of the corner of my eye, I see an eye, and when I look over, it's this huge horse, you know? And I'm like, man, that thing is big, man. If that thing gets spooked, you know, it's kind of close. And he was staring right at me, like you'd never know. It was so quiet, and it was just so huge. But the only thing that was keeping the horse in was a single rope.
I know.
And I would just look, and I really had a moment because I had just interacted with this Odu, and I looked, I said, what in the world does the horse have going through his mind to stop him from coming out because of the rope? And horses do it all the time. Like I've spoken to people who do equestrian or jockeys and things like that when we go to the track. And, you know, it's just one of those things. If they sense any fear or any doubt within you, it's contagious. They become fearful and doubtful as well. So it has to be utmost confidence when it comes to handling an animal like that. But that's in the Odu Oyekumbara why the horse respected the rope. And it was due to Eshu. I mean, when you pray Oyekumbara, it's Oyekumbara, Pabara, Difafun Eshu, Tiun Logun Eshin Atimalu, where it says Oyekumbara, Pabara, which is a euphemism for the Odu, divined for Eshu, when he was going to go to war, have conflict with the horse and the bull. So, you know, it's the same concept all the way around. He fed them, and just like that, they decided to acquiesce to what he wanted. So it's really ingenious, and we still see the effects of it in nature to this day.
You ever seen a Clydesdale?
Oh, those are the ones that they used to have at Anheuser-Busch, right?
Yeah.
Gorgeous. I mean, there's horses that are $1 million, bro.
I believe it.
Yeah, you got these, I think, the ones from Arabia and stuff like that. Just beautiful animals. But I'm terrified of them. I can't do it. Have you ever ridden a horse, though?
I have when I was much younger. It was kind of painful.
Yeah. I heard it can have some effects. I mean, when that thing starts running when you don't want it to, I've heard that's pretty wild.
We put, everybody knows I have a special needs son, right? So we put my son Dominic on one.
Oh heavens, the poor thing.
Oh man, I got some classic footage.
Oh my God, yeah. But I tell you, they're just so huge, and you see every muscle in them. When they move and stuff like that, you see the vascularity, and it's just, I wouldn't be caught dead on one. But I love looking at them from afar. And then once again back to Eshu. You look at Odus like the Odu Odiogunda or Oditola. In this Odu, Olodumare was a little bit toxic, or Olofing, the governor. And he wanted to keep tabs on everybody all the time. So he had this goat that had 6 eyes, right? 2 that would see the front, 2 that would see to the side or peripheral, and 2 that would see to the back, on the back of his head. And the goat was always watching everybody. And it kept everybody stressed out. It's not that people were doing things illegally, but people want some privacy too. So this was very stressful for them. So they went for divination with Oromela, and the Odu Diogunda was revealed, or Oditola. And Ifa told them to perform sacrifice to Eshu, right, to be able to resolve the issue. So they really didn't have much to sacrifice. They had some things in the packet, and Eshu said, hey, when I accomplish the goal that you guys want, I'll consume from there. So Eshu concocted a powder to be able to put the goat to sleep, right? Because what he was trying to do was prove to Olodumare that the goat was obsolete. So at night, Eshu snuck up next to the goat and threw the powder on him, right? The afoche. And when he did that, the goat nodded off. So Eshu was able to go right into Olodumare's or Olofing's bedchamber and tug on his toe. And when Olofing woke up and saw Eshu and saw his toe, and he said, what are you doing here? He said, no, I just walked right in. And he said, how? The goat is outside. He said, no, the goat's sleeping on the job. You might want to look into that, because if, God forbid, I was an enemy, you'd be dead. And Olofing woke up in a scramble and went outside and saw the goat drooling, and he smacked the goat awake, and he said, this is what you do? This is what I pay you for? And the goat saw Eshu and was like, oh, he did brujeria to me. And, Olofing held the goat on trial, and, he asked the people, what do you want to do with him? And the people were like, give him to Eshu. So in Odiogunda is one of the first Odus where Eshu ate goat. It's also in Iretemei as well, different story. But once again, Eshu with the trickery. He threw some powder on him. He had him falling asleep. And he switched it up and was able to manipulate people against him. He really was a master manipulator. Eshu is basically the Orisha of the laws of power. He's the Machiavelli of Ifa. And it's not to shed a negative light on him. I love Elegua. But, he's definitely a guy that you have to be on good terms with, because, even if you look at popular opinion and society and communication and sociology, Eshu has to do with all of these things. Like in the Odu Truponyao was where Eshu was able to save the king through the sway of popular opinion, because they were originally going to coup and go against the king. But Eshu, through sacrifice and, disseminating popular propaganda or positive, was able to change the public opinion, and the king was able to stay in power. So it speaks of the power that Eshu holds and in that of his sway. Other examples, we went over Diogunda. In the Odu of Otura D, it speaks of the Orisha Obatala. I tell you, Eshu would really get under Obatala's skin. Because, you talk about Obatala, the old serious father Orisha, and then, you got his youngest son, Eshu. He's really not his youngest son at all. He's an enigma, Eshu would do things to really irk Obatala, because he knew how easy it was to bother him. He was old and cranky. So Shango wanted Obatala's possessions. And the possession he most wanted was the bata drum. Obatala or Orisanla was actually the first owner of bata. But it was a little bit different. They were covered in like shea butter and cajarilla and stuff like that. You know, it was a very pure instrument. And Shango wanted to play them. But Shango, you know, Obatala wasn't pleased with him. He had bad grades. He didn't want to learn anything other than music and brujeria. So Obatala said, I'm not giving you the bata drum until you do what I want. So Shango would go to the corner and he'd cry it out and he'd get real angry and he'd punch the air. And one day, Eshu saw him and he said, my brother, what's the matter? He said, I want the bata drums and dad won't give them to me. And he said, he won't give you the bata drums? Relax, we'll get them. And Obatala left the house and his sons, Shango and Elegua, went in through the window. And Elegua, using the red palm oil that Shango had used to do a bowl with through his divination, through Oturadi, took the red palm oil and splattered it all over the drums. So they did that and they left. When Obatala got home, he vio aquello, and when he saw what was going on, he took the drums and threw them in the garbage. And being that red palm oil was his taboo, he wanted nothing to do with them anymore. So guess who was waiting by the garbage? Elegua, the Orisha of the garbage, and Shango, and they picked up the drums and they went to go play. So a couple things manifested here. One is why the bata drum ultimately belongs to Shango, but it has rhythms for all the other Orishas because it didn't originally belong to Shango. Why Obatala changed the bata drum for the Igbing drum that is most popularly associated with him in Yoruba land to this day. Why? You notice a lot of brother drummers, they rub red palm oil on their hands before they play. That's in the Odu of Oturadi. It's where originally it was shea butter and it became palm oil for the resonance, right? But Eshu at his finest, you know, Elegua really knew what made people tick, and he was a genius. He was very intelligent, and he knew how to get what he wanted and make it seem like it's what people wanted when it's really what he wanted the whole time. I mean, to recognize how much Obatala hated red palm oil, more than the idea of giving the drums to Shango, it was ingenious, you know? So he did that, and he was able to get what he wanted. And in the Odu of Oturadi, which is the Odu of the tambores, right? It's also why there's a Eshu that always lives at the foot of the bata drums, right? As its protector or custodian. Oturadi speaks of it, Odiogunda speaks of it, Edibere speaks of it with Lamu Lamu Bata, Obetwa with Olailu. There's a couple different issues that are associated with the drum. But that was one of the things he did to be able to, you know, garner the drum from Obatala for Chango, right? In the Odu of Oturache, it speaks of Eshu pretty heavily as well. In this Odu, it speaks of Orumila. And Orumila was going to go to Ife to accept the position as Oluo, right? Or to be the head Ifa priest or Araba of Ife. And he performed divination before leaving. And the Odu of Oturache was revealed, his own Odu. And he was in such a rush and a scurry that he said, you know, I'll give the rooster to Eshu when I get there. Big mistake. You never keep Eshu waiting for his things. You want it done immediately. But instead of that, he left. So Eshu was displeased with Orumila's conduct. And Orumila arrived at a four corners halfway between where he lived and Ife. And on one of the corners was a gentleman playing 3-card Marley, which is, you know, we turn the cards upside down and we start moving them over and over again so you can see if you remember which card is which.
Yeah, I'm terrible at that.
Yeah, no, I can't gamble for nothing. I don't gamble. And, you know, when he was doing it, Orumila won the game. He was so focused on the card, he won the game. And, you know, he looked at the guy, he ran it back a little bit. I think he threw him back $1 and said, you know, good game, I got to go. And the guy was like, all right. So Orumila left. And when Orumila arrived in Ife, he was received with a lot of pomp. You know, like, oh my God, Orula, the god of divination, you know, he's about to be the Oluo. And the Onife came out and said, Oluo, it's a pleasure, welcome. The first thing I want you to do is read me. And Orula was like, I'm on it. But when he went to throw the chain, which in the story it says it was the chain, or maybe it was his iking, I mean, we don't know. But when he went to perform the divination, he couldn't find the implement necessary. So he started going like this, feeling around, and the Onife said, "Is something wrong?" And Orumila says, "You know, you're not going to believe this, but I can't find my apo," which was his Ifa satchel. Like Babalawos, we're supposed to have like a satchel where we keep our Ifa and our instruments whenever we do traveling work, right? Like the Odu Oturamei says. So the Onife was very insulted. He said, "You know, I've offered you the biggest position in Ifa on earth, and you've rejected it with a lack of discipline and preparation. You know, you're banished. Be gone with you." And Orumila was embarrassed. Orumila was sad. Orumila felt completely defeated. But he remembered the last time he saw his Apo was at the Four Corners with the guy. He's like, "Yo, that guy must have robbed me." But when he went back, he saw Eshu dressed in red and black. And he was holding the Apo. And Orumila said, "Why would you do this to me?" He said, "Well, you didn't give me my rooster." And he said, "I was going to give it to you when I got there." Well, Eshu said, "Maybe I wanted to avoid all of the things that happened before you got there." And, you know, Orula was like, "I've lost the opportunity of a lifetime." He said, "If you get me the rooster, I'll fix things, but don't ever make me wait again." Orumila ran, got the rooster, fed Eshu, did the Ebo, and he was instructed to leave the Ebo in Ife. And when he went to Ife and he dropped the Ebo off, the Onife came running up to him like, "Oh my God, there's an epidemic, there's a drought, there's this, there's that. We need divination immediately." And Orumila pulled, Oturache was revealed, and he did the Ebo, and everything, you know, calmed down. And, you know, the Onife said, "I was wrong about you. You saved us in our most critical moment. You know, please stay as the Oluo." So he was able to save his situation, you know, but it was a reminder, once again, you got to break Eshu off immediately. It doesn't wait for nobody. But trickery at its finest. He basically got Orula. He yoked up his bag and he really messed things up, you know. But he was able to do it by distracting him, because Orumila was so vicious with the gambling. You know, he was like, "Oh, the card, the card, the card, the card." He was so focused on the card. Eshu did a sleight of hand and he pickpocketed him. Oturache is the Odu of thieves and pickpockets, unfortunately. So, you know, he was able to take advantage of his viciousness there, and Orumila, you know, almost suffered a very huge loss, you know, as far as professionally. A lot of trickery, a lot of different stories for sure. I mean, another one when it comes to him. I mean, with Eshu, there's really no end when it comes to this concept. In the Odu of Ofumeji, or Oragun, it speaks of Obatala. And Obatala would lend Eshu money, because Eshu was a gambler. And he would lend the money and lend the money and lend the money, and Eshu would lose it. He wasn't very good. So one day Obatala was like, "Hey, it's time for you to pay up." And Eshu was like, "I don't have the money. I've been trying to win it back and I can't." So Obatala was like, "All right, now you have to be my servant. You know, you're going to be my indentured servant and you're going to work the debt off." And Eshu was like, "Okay." So that worked out for a little bit, but Eshu, being intelligent, said, "You know, I have to find a way for this guy to relinquish my debt." So what did Eshu do, knowing that Obatala liked quiet and tranquility and peacefulness and all these different things? He decided to throw a huge full send party, right? And what was the name of that movie about the house party? Remember the one where they destroyed
Project
the house?
X?
Yeah, something like that. Imagine that. And Eshu throws this party, and Obatala comes home. And, you know, things are an absolute wreck. It's a real freak show. And when Obatala walked in, he said, "You know, what's the meaning of this?" And Eshu was like, "Oh, come on." And he grabbed Eshu by the throat, and he said, "I don't ever want you in my house again." And he threw Eshu out of the house, and Eshu was like, "Okay, I'll never come again." And he got away with his debt. So it's just time and time and time again, you're talking about, and, you know, mind you, I don't think that we should be wreaking havoc in people's lives. The children of Eshu kind of do what they want. They kind of, you know, they're the cat that always falls with their feet on the ground, and God bless them. I think that it's one of the most difficult experiences within Orisha and Ifa to be a child of Eshu. You know, I think the most difficult, frankly, is that of Shango, the initiates of Shango, because the key thing with them is them learning self-control. And when I say self-control, is that the child of Shango is born with so much power and so much potency and so much talent that it's hard to be able to focus that and discipline that in a way where they can get what they need out of it. But I think that the children of Eshu are a very, very, very close second, because they have a natural disadvantage spiritually. And that disadvantage is having the expanse of the universe and its absence of light in their Ori. That's why one of the most important deities that a child of Eshu will ever receive is the Ori icon, or the Leori, because it helps repair their destiny. Eshu is one of the key factors when it comes to the reparation of destiny, to the point where Orunmila, when he reveals destiny, the first person he has to see to be able to repair it is Eshu, because people's destinies come down broken because of Eshu. When we talk about the back of the head, Obeate, and the role that that plays within our psyche and thought process, that's the part that comes down out of alignment or askew. So to be able to realign that and readjust that, we have to count on the guy who caused it, with the prehistoric mind complex, etc., the subconscious. So that's why Eshu is so important, and that's why I say it's a difficult experience, because you're dealing with all of that in your Ori at all times until we get aligned. So for all the children of Eshu out there, Ori is of paramount importance, for any of you that don't have it. But then we're also talking about a guy who has that influence over all of us. When you look at all the stories and how Eshu was able to play into people's emotions, people's thoughts, feelings, and knew what made everybody tick, that's why he's the Orisha of temptation. He knew exactly what to put in front of people to take them through the absolute ringer, to see if they were deserving of Olodumare's grace or not, if they could withstand all of that anxiety and pressure to not give in to those impulses. So, whether we go all the way back to the beginning of creation in Ayobe, when he literally created the parallel lines of separation, keeping two people that could have been together right next to each other but apart for a lifetime, or all the way to Oragun, when he, stressed Obatala out to the point where he relinquished the dead, or when he tricked death in Ayobe, just like in the Odu of Obewenye. There's countless ones. I mean, if you look at the Odu of Obeate, when he was the guy who would work with Orunmila, right? And, everything was going fine. But Orumila's wife, due to Orunmila always being absent, started, catching feelings for Eshu and noticing him. I mean, being that he was, as nature intended, always by the river, by their house, things happened. Orunmila realized, and, when he saw Eshu and Ochung embraced, Orula said, hey, she's all yours. So once again, Eshu put her in a position to not be desired by her husband anymore, and they eventually continued, and he knew that Orula didn't want any problems, so he said everything works out. You have Odus like that. I mean, you look at the Odu of Oberosung as well. The person was going through misery and struggle, and it was really just because they hadn't attended to Eshu. They went for divination. Obedosumo was revealed, and literally said all they had to do was feed Eshu at the corner. And when they did, Eshu was laughing at them, and they said, well, why are you laughing at us? He said, because I'm laughing at how big you think your problems are and how small I know they really are. So we're dealing with somebody who is on another level of existence, somebody who can fluctuate between any of these planes dimensionally at whim and will. So it's really incredible concept.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So yeah, Eshu, take care of him, guys. Make sure that he's up to par and that he's content, and you're taking care of him on a weekly basis. Make sure you're getting with your Bawala or your Orisha to make sure he's fed annually. And everything will be just fine, and we won't be victims of his trickery, and we'll reap all of those blessings, because the same way that he can take it away, he definitely gives it.
Yeah, I remember you early on in this series, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, you said that Eshu was probably the most important one.
Absolutely. I think that's our most popular short, actually, brother. Eshu, without him, he is the black hole. He is the fabric of the universe. He, when you look at even Oyekun Meji, when he became the dominator of language and communication, or him being able to basically teleport or mobilize through the universe at whim, we're talking about absolute power. And they say power is important, but speed kills. Eshu is the deity of velocity. Like if you look at the Odu of Ochetura, it's actually where speed went for divination, and it was actually encompassed within Eshu's body. So that's why Ochetura is seen as the embodiment of the travel between heaven and earth from a sacrificial standpoint. You look at Owani Chobe, it speaks of the mobility of Eshu, where he's able to be all places at once. He's omnipresent. Irete Kutang speaks of this as well, because Eshu is behind all of our doors. You know, there's not one land on earth that doesn't pay homage to Eshu. So, you know, the same way, you know, he can bring about the Ajogung and the negativity of which he is the leader. You know, he can sway all of the Ires to us as well, being part of the Irumole, or the positive energies of light that help facilitate things as well.
Yeah. All right, guess what time it is?
Okay.
All right. Guys, you guys know by now. We have a premium membership tier. You guys can join it. It's real simple. Just click on that join button right under this video, and that takes you to our membership platform.
A magical place.
Yes, it is so magical. It's a secret place where if you click it, you go to it, and you have access to several extras, and whether it's videos, discounts on merch, private shows, videos just on comments and stuff. And so, like, it's something you definitely want to do.
Oh, yeah.
So, and you also get shout outs. We do shout outs at every episode. So,
Love our members.
so we're going to give shout outs to our supporters here today.
right.
This is our, a microphone is messing up here.
Yep.
We're giving a shout out to our supporters here. So, here we go with the Child of All Nations.
Okay.
We have I Am Liam,
Cool.
D Johnson,
Thank you.
Chai with Ty,
Okay.
Kimberly Perry.
Awesome. Thank you.
We got Gilly84.
Okay. What's up, Gil?
We got Unique Wisdom,
Very nice. Interesting.
Ezekiel Jabiz,
Nice.
Coco Celeste,
Thank you.
and Chris Carrera.
Thank you so much, Chris. Guys, botanicacandlesandmore.com is up and running for all your product and service needs. Spiritually, we do ship. If you can't catch us here on YouTube on video, be sure to listen to us on all those major platforms. You know, iHeartRadio, Apple, etc. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. A big thank you from all of us here at Our Roots Podcast. And until next time, family, see the light.
Baba Joseph showed the path today. Baba knows the way, we follow the signs. He walks with the Orisha through sacred lines. He speaks with the ancients, he honors the drum. He carries the wisdom where we all come from.